Scott Ritter, I'm ready to go. And by the way, Scott and the boys say air power is not enough, but it's above your pay grade.
Scott Ritter is the former Marine Corps intelligence officer and the most famous weapons inspector in the history of the world.
Somehow the United States and NATO have gotten into their thick skulls that embracing a policy that seeks the strategic defeat of Russia in Ukraine is a harmless policy, that there's no consequences for their action. All the people that post this and postulate this and say this is what we want, you are literally by definition creating the conditions for the release of Russian nuclear weapons. This is part of the lowering of the threshold for the release of nuclear weapons that's taking place both in the West and another one. Jan Stoltenberg says, we're going to take 24 of these 100 B-61 bombs we have sprinkled around Europe, and we're going to put them on operational standby. That means they're not sitting in a nuclear weapons locker under key, and decisions have to be made to pull it out, to activate them, et cetera. No, they're going to be ready to rock and roll, ready to be put underneath an F-35A or an F-16 that belongs to one of any number of nations. It used to be just 5, but now the NATO nuclear deterrence people are saying anybody that has an F-35, including Poland, by the way, when they get them, or an F-16, can now opt into being a nation capable of delivering nuclear weapons. This means that every time one of these aircraft take off from a NATO airfield, Russia has to assume they carry a nuclear weapon. And of course, if it's the F-35, it carries it in weapons bays underneath, so you can't physically tell. Let's say that 3 of these take off and now come screaming towards the Belarus border or the border with Ukraine or in the Baltics in some sort of, manly demonstration of force to Russia. Russia has to assume that they're carrying nuclear weapons. And the closer they get, the closer to the threshold of Russia's own hair-trigger nuclear response we get. And we haven't even talked about the fact that in 2026, the United States and Germany have reached an agreement for the reintroduction of intermediate range missiles back onto European soil. That weapons that I got rid of. This is why it's a little personal to me, George. I know I'm getting a little hot under the collar and a little angry here, but I was part of the process, the people, the team that got rid of what was then the greatest threat, not only to European security, but global security. Because here's the other thing I'm going to tell your European audience. There's no such thing as limited nuclear warfare. None whatsoever, especially when it comes to the potential of NATO American weapons being used against Russia. A nuclear weapon used against Russia on Russian soil is the equivalent of Russia firing nuclear weapons at the United States. Russia will respond with the totality of its nuclear arsenal, destroying everything in Europe and everything in the United States it can't possibly reach. And now we're talking about putting back these weapons that have the potential of carrying nuclear weapon or warheads. The ground-launched cruise missile has a nuclear warhead that's in storage right now. Right now, we don't keep it on the weapon because of the caps provided by the Strategic Nuclear Force, a New START Treaty. That expires February 4th, 2026. After that point, the cap is gone. We will bring all these warheads out. The ground-launched cruise missiles will have nuclear warheads. And now Russia's looking at a situation where when you talk about protocol, the protocols are built on a presumption that the president will have between 15 and 30 minutes. The Russian protocols are similar, 15 to 30 minutes to make a decision. When you introduce intermediate nuclear weapons into Europe, especially hypersonic Dark Eagle weapons, the Russians now have 6 minutes. There ain't no protocol for 6-minute coordination. The only option Russia has at that point in time is to hit the button and launch everything, or preempt, which is another thing Russia's looking at. We have created the conditions where Russian nuclear doctrine is going to be triggered. We have lowered the threshold for the use of these weapons, and we're doing everything humanly possible to front load scenarios that put Russia on the defensive, where Russia either has to preempt with their own nuclear weapons what they deem to be an imminent nuclear weapon attack by the United States, or have a hair trigger response if they detect something coming their way, and they will fire everything in response. When I look at this, and I knowing human beings as I have, and knowing the history, I mean, people understand we've come very close in the past to having accidents that lead to nuclear exchange. I'm not confident that we're competent enough to ride through this period of time. In fact, I believe just the opposite. I believe that people don't believe that Russia has a nuclear doctrine that is real. They view it as a bluff. They view it as a fake, and they're willing to push the boundaries in hopes that Russia folds like a house of cards. Now, Russia won't fold, and if we continue in this direction without interruption, I personally believe that the summer of 2026 may be the last summer any of us enjoy on this planet. Now, as you said, I've been doing this for a while. This is something that I know an awful lot about. I know the mindset, I know the policies, I know the procedures. And when I put it all together, we don't have the checks and balances in place to prevent a nuclear war. If we allow things to go forward unchecked as they are now, the summer of 2026 is going to be a very, very dangerous period of time. Normally, you'd like to believe that rational thinking humans, people with a modicum of sanity would step in and do the right thing, put in place the political impetus that led to the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty. Put a marker on the table that had political viability, that resonated politically, that said, we will not tolerate this. And so the forces that be had to take that into consideration. And in the pause that exists between your act of absolute brilliant citizenship and the signing of the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty in December of 1987 by Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev, the people who make these decisions reflected on the danger that these weapons produced, and they agreed, we need to get rid of them. And we did get rid of them. So we need that today, but where are the people? Where are the people? People believe today, right now in America, we have an election coming up. If nuclear weapons, if preventing nuclear war is not on the agenda, if we're not compelling the candidates to talk about what their plan is for peace, for preventing nuclear war, for promoting arms control, then whoever is in the office won't be able to do anything between 2026. If we can get enough Americans to commit their vote, not to a person or a party, but to an issue, preventing nuclear war. And if we get enough committed votes in the swing states, let's say, because Michigan is going to go 10,000 votes one way or the other. If I can get 50,000 commitments, we're now politically viable in Michigan. And now we have between September 28th and November to force these people, if you want to win Michigan, put this on the table. But given what's happening in America, I wanted to get the Russian perspective. And he said something fascinating to me that it's in my mind, it's bothered me tremendously. And he said, when we look at America today, what we see is the Soviet Union in the final stages of perestroika, when the collapse was happening, the end of the Soviet Union, a dysfunctional society, a society in disarray. And I went, really? You see that in America? And he went, sure, why not? You just had a coup. Duh. Think about it. We had a coup. The Democratic Party has selected somebody who could very well be the president of the United States, who has foregone any of the normal participatory election prerequisites. Kamala Harris, if she had gone through a primary challenge, she wouldn't have made it. She wouldn't have passed the initial Democratic benchmark, to qualify. She'd be done. So they avoided that. Biden came in, won the primary, came in, and now they've pushed him aside, inserted her. It's a coup, a literal coup. Coups don't have to be violent. This is a soft coup happening in America today. We are a society in disarray. We are a society in decline. And the reason why I can say that wholeheartedly is no one's talking about it. Everybody's acting as if this is, the mainstream media is in normal. They're in a love fest right now. She's the greatest thing. Don't they understand that we're supposed to be a constitutional republic where we select the people who represent us, who manage the republic through the democratic processes of representational elections? That the will of the people is manifest here. And they've eliminated the will of the people, and the mainstream media is celebrating it, and the people are silent. We are a nation in collapse. And if we don't figure out how to reverse this, the United States will probably go the way of the Soviet Union.
There was extreme violence in Pennsylvania a week before. And as we're talking about a coup, that too looks and smells like a coup to me. If it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's possibly a duck.
Higher authority that had created a condition inside America, a political condition that viewed the target as an existential threat to American democracy worthy of being eliminated. Not just worthy of, but by definition, if you're an existential threat, it must be eliminated. Donald Trump must be eliminated, cannot be allowed to be president, because if he becomes president, it's the end of America. That's what President Biden was saying. That's what senior members of the Senate and the Congress, that's what the mainstream media was saying. Jake Tapper, who moderated the June 27th debate, called Donald Trump the equivalent of Adolf Hitler. So we have a system where Trump has been set up as a target. Biden actually said, put a target on him. I know he says it was in a different context, but hey, if you're somebody listening out there who's been told this is the modern day equivalent of Adolf Hitler, and the president says, put a target on him, what does that mean? I think it means put a target on him. And then you have this patsy, this kid with no training, suddenly flying a drone, doing professional level reconnaissance of 3 encrypted phones, manages to get a rifle up on the roof, bear crawling up the only approach that shields him from the counter sniper teams, and gets off 8 shots, 3 of which should have killed the president of the former president of the United States. It's a miracle. I'm not religious, but I mean, I may be after this, because there is literally no other configuration of his head that could have existed without taking off his head. It was a successful kill shot. It was just the last minute inadvertent twitch that saved him. How did this happen? The emergency services unit, not from the Secret Service, but from local cops, got pulled from the one spot that could have stopped this. They were pulled from that, leaving it unguarded while he crawled up, while everybody's screaming, there's the shooter, there's the shooter. This kid was given a clean route straight to the president and took the shots that should have killed the president. This team that's protecting him, that's amateur hour up there. The length of time it took them to get around the president, to get him off the stage, the fact that they didn't get him off the stage prior to this. The moment somebody spotted this kid up there, they should have taken the president off the stage. He should never have gotten on the stage. This doesn't happen by accident. Somebody at a very senior level wanted Donald Trump dead.
When the government tries to kill the main contender for the presidency and almost succeeds, and when the failing seems to precipitate the overthrow in a coup inside the White House of the sitting president, this is a kind of 21st century civil war, is it not?
People talk about hybrid warfare. They accuse Russia. Russia's waging hybrid warfare, which means they're seeking to achieve strategic objectives without high intensity direct combat. This is a hybrid coup, hybrid civil war. The professional class of unelected bureaucrats who dominate policy making and policy implementation in Washington, D.C., they're the ones that made this happen. They're the ones who carried out the coup against Biden. They're the ones who facilitated the assassination attempt against Donald Trump. They are the kingmakers, the literal kingmakers. They are the power brokers. They are the secret power behind the power. And if we're not calling that out, if we still want to pretend, the establishment, this entrenched bureaucracy, is a threat. And I saw that firsthand 2 years ago when I went to Intermediate Nuclear Forces reunion, and we had an arms control official come up, and we asked the question, why didn't Joe Biden act on his promise to change nuclear posture to a sole use doctrine, meaning the sole purpose of nuclear weapons is to retaliate against a nuclear attack instead of this current preemptive policy? And the response was because the interagency wasn't ready. When you're the president of the United States, the chief executive, there's no such thing as the interagency not being ready. They either become ready or you fire them. The point being made there, and maybe that's not the point that this person wanted to make, is that the president's not in charge of American policy, that there's this unelected blob in Washington, D.C. that's calling the shots about everything from nuclear war on down. And they're the ones who removed Joe Biden from power, and they're the ones who tried to kill Donald Trump.
Wow.
Or to take the nation to war halfway. That's a real tough decision. That's why they get paid the big bucks. That's why they get the limos and you don't.